Subtracting real numbers. What I've always said with subtraction is if you want to think of it as old-time math like this, you're basically removing, in this case, 2 from 6. Most of you would agree with me, this elementary format of subtraction. You're removing 2 from 6. The definition they have there describes that this is true, but it's also the same thing as adding the opposite of the subtrahend. Add opposite of subtrahend. That's the second number in a 2-part subtraction problem. The subtrahends can be like if there's a bunch of things being subtracted. Those are the things being removed. Anyway, that is what the gray box there on page 59 has. And if we utilize the definition of subtraction in example 1, thank you, we're going to see that it does the same thing. I'm going to do my own really quick. Here's the first one, 9 minus 12, I know. We're going to do 9 plus a negative 12. You guys who had the blue book worked on this extensively. Would you come up with a negative 3 here? Because the rule is when you're combining things with a different sign, find the difference and keep the sign of the one with a larger absolute value, which happens to be 12. If I said to you negative 6 minus 1, it's the same thing as saying negative 6 plus a negative 1. Same sign, you simply add and keep the sign. Okay? I know, exciting. Or maybe I might say to you some number minus a negative something. Removing a negative is the same thing as adding its opposite. And for sake of argument, I'm going to do that. Remember, we flip the sign, so add the opposite of the second number, add the opposite of the second number, which makes it this. The rule it follows is the same thing as A. When combining two different signs, find the difference and keep the sign of the one that has a larger absolute value, which in this case is 10. That's why it remains positive. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. If I say to you negative y minus a negative y plus 4, this literally means that all of this is being subtracted from that negative y. Now the reason I'm making a stink about this is because you have to consider that this negative applies to everything within. So just like we distribute a number that precedes a parentheses, we also distribute its sign right along with it. That makes the negative y a positive y. And that makes the negative positive 4, we're going to add the opposite of 4. Bring down my y. Okay? That negative, when it precedes a parentheses, must be distributed in to anything that is inside the parentheses. Okay? Looks like in the end we end up with a negative 4, right? These two, due to the property of opposites, cancel out. Now, it doesn't matter how many of these things are in parentheses, which I'm going to give you another D, like this. Just because there are now 3 things within doesn't mean the negative doesn't get distributed anyway. Now keep in mind you could actually simplify the parentheses before distributing, which would make it a negative x minus 6. But assuming you forgot to do that, we're going to distribute here, here, and here. A negative negative 2x is a positive 2x. A negative x, or a negative positive x, so that's adding the negative there. And a negative negative 6. Add the opposite, that up there. So, bring down the one that was resting up there comfortably, and you end up with 2x plus 6. That canceled that. The crux of this lesson is all that in a bag of chips. Now, where it gets a little bit tricky is in the wording, and that's where I want to go to example 2. The wording can make this tricky. Here's my example 2. 15 decreased by negative 3. How would you write this? Anybody have? Go ahead, Justice. Good. Thank you for all of you for jumping on. That's exactly right. I love it. Okay. That's another one. Okay, so here's one. I think Philip's reading my teacher's edition again. 12 fewer than negative 4. 12 fewer than negative 4. What do you think? This is other way around.
Negative 4 minus 12.
Negative 4 minus 12. Add the opposite. It is 12 smaller than the negative 4. I made it negative because we're adding the opposite. Okay? There's just another example. If we're taking something and decreasing it, it looks like that in the normal order. If we are stating a sentence by comparing to the subject, the negative 4 being the subject, it looks like this. Okay, one more. Do you guys remember how the negative symbol can also be used to explain the opposite of something? So here's the next one in that bunch. The opposite of the difference between y and 7. So you've already said you get the opposite of, okay? So the opposite of the difference between y and 7. Yep, y minus 7. Y minus 7. Very good. The opposite of the difference between what? Y and 7. And since they state it in that direction, y and 7 gets stated that way. Okay, those are 3 wordings that you're going to see in your homework, 43 and 45. Okay. Last bit. This is just a little bit more practice. I would bet I could probably leave you right here, but I'm not going to. Here's the last bit. Try these. Just try them. There's the first one. Just try them. I already kind of introduced this to you a few minutes ago, but those 3. If you use the term the opposite when those negatives precede something, sometimes it helps. The opposite of f plus 8, well, the f is positive, right? So it becomes a negative f. Negative f plus negative 8 is right. If you write it like this, I am totally fine with that. Okay, in all honesty, you're really not going to write it this way much. If you do, fine. But your textbook is going to more than likely give you this example, or that answer. So this sign flipped the signs of the positive F and the positive 8. Okay? The same thing's going to happen here. This is going to flip the sign of all of this. So negative B becomes a what? A positive 6 becomes a negative A becomes a, okay? That's it. The negative flipped the signs of all the things within. Now notice this M that's lingering out front. We're not really doing anything with him, so he's just going to sit there. But look, the opposite of negative n plus 3. If you remove that, you're going to distribute it in just like we did before. So negative n, a negative positive 3, and there you have it. That, my friends, is everything for today. Okay, it does not get any more difficult for today. You can have the rest of this time to work. Please